Tov. Today's Daf Yomi is Nedarim 82, Nedarim Pei Beis, and we're going to start on 2 lines from the bottom on 81b. 81b, 2 lines from the bottom, with the Gemara asks the following question. By Mine Rava mi Rav Nachman. And Rava asked the question from Rav Nachman. Tashma Shamita, if marital relations, marital intercourse, according to the Rabbanon, according to the rabbis' position, who say, we have learned in the Mishnah on 79 on Daf Ayin Tes, that the rabbis say that if it's something, if a woman takes a vow against bathing or against putting on cosmetics, the rabbis say that that's a vow of affliction of the soul, and therefore the father or the husband can annul that vow. Whereas according to the Rabbi Yossi, that's not a vow of affliction of the soul. So now we're asking the question. It says, Rava says to Rav Nachman, Tash Mishamita, this marital intercourse, let's say she refrains, she says, no marital intercourse for me. According to the Rabbanon, is that a vow of Inoi Nefesh? Is that a vow of affliction of the soul? Or is it considered a vow that's between the husband and the wife? What's the difference? What's the difference if it's a vow of affliction or if it's a vow between the husband and the wife? So the Gemara tells us that we have learned earlier that the difference is if it's a vow of affliction, and when the husband annuls the vow, the vow is annulled forever, even after she marries somebody else. And so if she takes a vow against marital relations and he annuls it, then when he divorces her, she can marry somebody else. But if it's a vow of just between him and her, if he annuls the vow, then the vow is only annulled insofar as between them. But if he divorces her, then she's going to be prohibited. The vow will take effect, and she won't be able to have marital relations with somebody else until that vow gets annulled. So we want to know, what did the Rabbanon say about this vow of Tash Meshamita? Is it a vow of Inoi Nefesh, of affliction, and therefore will be annulled forever if he rejects it? Or is it a vow of Beino Beina? So the Gemara says, Amarei Timisua. Well, we learned this in a Mishnah later on in our chapter, because it says in the Mishnah, if she takes a vow and says, I am prohibited to have any, I take a vow that I'm not going to have any relations with the Jews. This is how most commentaries understand that this is a vow against having intercourse with another Jew. So Yafir Chalko, then the husband can reject with the vow as it relates to him, and then he can continue to have marital relations with her. But then she's still going to remain prohibited to have relations with any other Jew after she and her husband get divorced. So now the Gemara brings its proof. If you want to say they're Inoi Nefesh, if you want to say this vow against marital intercourse is really a vow against affliction of the soul. Oh, by the way, before I go on, I want to say that tomorrow morning the Daf Yomi is at 9 a.m. because we're going to be on a MLK schedule. So the Daf Yomi, the davening will be at 8 a.m. and Daf Yomi will be at 9 a.m. So anyway, back to the Gemara. And if you want to say that it's a vow of Inoi Nefesh, it's a vow of affliction, why is she still going to have a vow to be with another Jew? Obviously, the vow will be completely annulled. And this proves that this vow, since it's going to be only annulled as it relates to the husband, but not as it relates to other people, is a vow that is beinola beinahav, and it's a vow between him and her alone. And therefore, after he annuls the vow, it's only annulled as it relates to him and her, but the vow will still remain in effect as it relates to other people. Shmamina. So to Gemara says, so therefore we can answer our question. We had said, is this vow of marital relations, is it a vow against Inoi Nefesh, or is it a vow against Beinola Beina? Is it a vow against intercourse with the husband, affliction of the soul, or is it a vow between him and her? And we see from here that it's not completely annulled forever, so therefore it's a vow between him and her. Gemara says, no, that's l'Rabbanan tibayalach mishum denetua ani mina Yehudim. Rabbi Yossi Katana. The Gemara says, our question was l'Rabbanan tibayalach. Our question is, what do the rabbis say? What's the rabbi's position about this question. You answered me from the case of the Mishnah later on in our chapter from the Tuanim and Yehudim, but since that's a Mishnah from our chapter, we have a concept, Rabbi Yossi Katanala. We have a concept that all these Mishnayot, these anonymous Mishnayot of our Mishnah, normally an anonymous Mishnah is the position of the rabbis, but in our chapter, we're going to argue, says the Gemara, that all these anonymous Mishnayot actually reflect the position of Rabbi Yossi. The Amar Rafuna, because Rafuna taught Kula Pirkin Rabbi Yossi, that our entire chapter reflects the position of Rabbi Yossi. And how do we know that? We might keep into Katani, because since we had in our first Mishnah on Ayin Tes, we had said twice the statement. We said Rabbi Yossi says this. Rabbi Yossi says that vows of not bathing and vows of not adorning are actually not vows of affliction. And then at the end of that Mishnah, without saying another position in between, it says, this is the position of Rabbi Yossi. We see, why does it say Rabbi Yossi twice? Given the Ketani Rabbi Yossi, Omer, Ein Elu, Midra, Ino, Nefesh. Since Rabbi Yossi had stated at the beginning of the Mishnah 79, that Rabbi Yossi says this is not a vow of affliction. Why does it have to repeat again in the Mishnah? Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says to reject the vow. This is the position of Rabbi Yossi. So Shmami Na Mikam Ve'elach Rabbi Yossi. It's the teacher, says Rav Huna, that from this point on in our tractate, it's the position of Rabbi Yossi, and this teaches us the powerful teaching that Rabbi Yossi, that the whole chapter is the teaching of Rabbi Yossi, and so therefore you brought me a proof for our question from the Mishnah in our chapter, that this is the answer to that the rabbis say that a vow against intercourse is just a vow between him and her. No, that's only the position of Rabbi Yossi. We want to know, what do the rabbis say about this circumstance? Do the rabbis say that this is we want to know, what do the rabbis say? Do the rabbis say this is a vow of nefesh, or do the rabbis say this is a vow between him and her? So we haven't answered that question yet. But since we brought in this idea that Rav Huna says that our whole chapter is the Mishnah of Rabbi Yossi, our whole chapter goes according to the position of Rabbi Yossi, the Gemara is going to bring us another example where Rav Huna's statement comes into play. And that is from the following teaching that Amar Shmuel Mishmei de Levi, that Shmuel taught in the name of Levi, Kol Nedarim, Baal Mefer Lishto, that a husband is allowed to reject all the vows that his wife makes, chutz min hanasi al ploni, except if the wife says, your friend, such and such a person, is not allowed to have benefit from me. If the husband actually says that, if the wife actually says, your friend, let's say she's married to Reuven, and she says, Reuven, listen, Shimon can't get any benefit from me, that's not a vow that the husband can annul. That's not a vow of Ino Nefesh, and that's not a vow between him and her, and so therefore the husband cannot annul that vow. She'eno Mefer, he can't annul it. But Shmuel says in the name of Levi, but let's say she says, your friend Shimon, I can't get any benefit from Shimon, then Mayfair, then indeed her husband can reject that vow, because that is going to be a vow of Ino Nefesh. If she says something that is prohibited upon me, that's a vow of Ino Nefesh, and the husband can reject it. So the Gemara says, but wait, the Gemara says, let's question this teaching of Shmuel from a Mishnah. What does our Mishnah say? We just did this opening Mishnah of our chapter. Now, what did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah said, Tanan, Peros Medina Zualai. If a woman says, I'm not going to get any benefit from the fruit of, let's say, the city of Baltimore, she's living in Washington, Peros Medina Zualai, well, that's not going to be a vow of affliction, and so therefore, he can't reject a vow, because Yavi Lam Medina Acheres. So there, he should just bring it from a different country. So we see from a different, bring her fruit from Arlington. You don't need fruit from Baltimore. And so we see from here that where she says this formulation of the fruit of this place or the fruit of this person prohibited upon me, that's not a vow of affliction. This contradicts the teaching that Shmuel just made. So Amar Rav Yosef said, no dika Amra. So Rav Yosef said, the Mishnah that says that he can't annul that vow, that's because she says the following, she had said it as follows, the Amra Shetavi. She said, Shetavi ata. She said, you bring me this fruit from this place. So therefore, she said, you are not allowed to bring me fruit from this place. And so therefore, this is not considered to be Inoi Nefesh because she's still allowed to benefit from the fruit of this place by other people bringing it. And so therefore, he can't annul it. But when she says, I'm not going to get any benefit from this place, or any benefit from this man, that is indeed going to be a vow of Inoi Nefesh. So the Gemara says, so the Gemara again tries to question Shmuel's teaching from the following case. Tashma. So from the continuation of that Mishnah, the Mishnah says, Peros chamvani ze'alai. If a woman says, the fruit of this shopkeeper is prohibited upon me, if she says the fruit of this shopkeeper is prohibited upon me, en yachol hafer, then he cannot annul this vow. So because she could just get it from a different shopkeeper. And so we see from here, it's a question on Shmuel, because Shmuel said it's a vow of affliction and you couldn't know it. Mark tries to give the same answer here. So the Gemara says, no, we're going to give the same answer where she says, she said, you be the one to bring it. And so that's why he can't annul it, because clearly he's the only one who's prohibited to bring it. And so therefore, it's not a vow of affliction because she could still get fruit from this shopkeeper by having somebody else bring it. But then the Gemara says, Lo aita parnasa. So the next line in the Mishnah stated, Lo aita parnasa so ela mimenu. If the only way that this husband was able to get food was by getting it from this shopkeeper, hareze yafer, then he can reject the vow, because how else is he supposed to bring the fruit? V'i amrit dika amra shetaviata. And if he said, I'm only prohibited with you bringing the fruit, but somebody else can bring it, then why is he able to reject this vow? Why can he reject this vow? Let's just somebody else bring the fruit, and then it's okay. So it can't be that that clause. So if from the fact that the concluding clause is where it can't be referring to where only the husband is prohibited, it's where everybody is prohibited. Reisha the come so therefore also Reisha the kamaisihi. So and you want to say that so the first clause also is where she's bringing it and not just the husband. And so therefore ela Reisha en yachol hafer the kamaisihi. So it must be that the first clause is where we're saying he can't reject it, and it's where she is bringing it. And also, therefore, what's the reason? Umas nisin Rabbi Yossi. And our Mishnah follows the position of Rabbi Yossi. The Amar Rav Huna Kula Pirkin Rabbi Yossi, where Rav Huna says the whole chapter goes according to the position of Rabbi Yossi. And when it says that he can't reject it, Mishum Inoi Nefesh, Rabbi Yossi is saying he can't reject it because of the cause of Inoi Nefesh, because of affliction of the soul. Of a Mefer Nedarim Shabeino Labeina, but he can reject it because of matters between him and her. And so that's what Rabbi Yossi is saying, that if he makes this type of vow, it's not affliction of the soul, but it is something between him and her, and so therefore he can reject the vow. So it's not going to be a question on Shmuel, because we're going to say that this is the position, this Mishnah represents the position of Rabbi Yossi, but the Rabbanan would say that under those circumstances, he could still reject it because it's affliction of the soul. So now we go up to the next clause. So Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. So Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel, we learned in the Mishnah on 79a. It said back in our Mishnah on the Nedarim Ayin Testament Aleph that these are the vows that the husband can reject for his wife, those things that have Inoi Nefesh. And the Gemara said, so now the Gemara is going to deal with a circumstance where the wife makes one vow, and in this one vow, she makes a vow that she's not going to benefit from two things. And one of those things has the prohibition of Inoi Nefesh, and the other one is not Inoi Nefesh. One of them is affliction of soul, and the other one is not. So can the husband reject this vow, or can he reject the whole vow, or just the part of it that has Inoi Nefesh? So that's the question that the Gemara is dealing with. Again, now we're going to talk about a case where the wife makes one vow, but the vow has two parts to it. One of the parts has Inoi Nefesh, which the husband should be able to annul, and the other one is not Inoi Nefesh, which the husband can annul. And we want to know if the husband rejects the vow, if the whole vow is rejected. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Nadra Mishtei Kikaros. Let's say she takes a vow against 2 loaves of bread. Now, one of the loaves of bread is geschmack. It's a just tremendous loaf of bread. It's like the fresh challah that you eat on Friday night. It's so soft and flavorful. The other one is like 1-month-old bread that was sticking out and was moldy and nobody wants to touch it. So she takes a vow. Clearly, the first one is an affliction of the soul, and the second one is nothing. So she takes a vow from 2 loaves of bread. Now, one of them is good bread, and if she doesn't eat it, she's going to be afflicted. The other one, not eating that loaf of bread is no great deal. It's no great thing. Since he can reject the one that's an affliction of the soul, at the same time, he's also allowed to reject the one that's not an affliction. That's the position of Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel. Rav Asi Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Asi says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Mefer Misana ve'ein Mefer she'ein Misana. He says no. He can reject only the part of the vow that's an affliction, but the part of the vow that's not an affliction, he cannot reject. He cannot reject because he can't reject that part of the vow. He can only reject the part of the vow that is actually an affliction. So what's the concept here? Again, let me repeat this concept. So there's a dispute. If she has the husband can reject the wife's vows only if they are inoi nefesh, but only if they're an affliction of her soul. So if they're not affliction of her soul and they don't relate between him and her, then he can't reject it. So now in this case, she takes a vow which has 2 parts. One part is an affliction, the other part is not affliction. She vows against 2 loaves of bread. One is a good loaf, one is a junky loaf. So since he's rejecting the part of the vow that relates to the loaf of bread, can he also reject the part of the vow that doesn't relate to the loaf of the bread? This is a dispute amongst the rabbis. According to the position of Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Shmuel, since he's able to reject the part of the vow that relates to the good loaf of bread, therefore he's also able to reject the other part at the same time. Whereas Rav Asi says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, he can only reject the part that's an affliction, but he can't reject the part that's not an affliction. And because this idea that you need to reject an entire vow, it only means that the husband needs to reject everything that he can reject with that vow. But in the case where he can't reject the whole thing, then he's not missing anything, and so therefore he's rejecting what he's capable of. So that's the one approach. The Ika Amri, alternative approach, that this was not how it went down, but a different version. Nedarim mishtei karos. If a woman made a vow against 2 loaves of bread, with 1 loaf, she is a vow of affliction. It's good bread. It's geschmack, homemade challah on a Friday night coming straight out of the oven. She says, no homemade challah for me. And the next one, the other is, like this stuff that they serve you on the airplanes. It's clearly not an affliction. Can he reject it? According to this, Rabbi Yochanan said, you can only reject the part that's affliction and not the other one. So the Gemara is now going to challenge, Rav Asi is going to challenge Rabbi Yochanan. Again, Rabbi Yochanan's position is that the husband can only reject the part that's an affliction and not the other part. And we're going to challenge it from the Mishnah in Nazir. God willing, we're going to get to Nazir in a little bit more than a week. I can't wait to get to Mesechus Nazir, but of course we want to. The last week of Nedarim is so geschmack, you're going to love it. But the Gemara is going to ask a question from Nazir. Aisha Shenadra Nazir, a woman who makes a vow that she's going to be a Nazirite. And a Nazirite, we know, is not allowed to drink wine. And a Nazirite is not allowed to come in contact with the dead body. And she intentionally violates her vow, so she's not allowed to, if she's a Nazirite, she can't drink wine, she can't come in contact with the dead. And she intentionally does that. She intentionally drinks the wine, she intentionally comes in contact with the dead. Harezum sofeges es harbayim. So she is going to get lashes because she violated her vow. She's going to get the lashes. So again, what's the case? The woman makes a vow against being a Nazirite. And so a Nazirite can't drink wine, and then she goes out and drinks wine. So she gets the lashes. But, hey, for law, but let's say her husband annulled her vow. She takes a vow. She takes a vow against being a. She takes a vow she's going to be a Nazarite. She doesn't know it, but her husband rejects her vow right away. She goes ahead the same day. She thinks she's a Nazarite. She doesn't know that the vow is not binding anymore. She goes ahead and drinks the wine and comes in contact with the dead. She doesn't get the lashes because the vow is not current anymore. And if you want to say that the husband can only annul those vows that are affliction of the soul and not the vows that are not affliction, then as part of the vow against the Nazarite, you're not allowed to drink wine and you're not allowed to eat the seed and the skins. The husband can't annul that part of the vow. The seeds and the skins are not an affliction of the soul. Not drinking wine is an affliction of the soul, but not eating the seed or the skins is not affliction. So from the fact that that part is annulled, that proves the husband can annul both parts. That's the Gemara's question. We'll deal with the answer tomorrow. But I want to leave everybody with this question. This is the question I'm going to leave you with. Okay, so the wife, she makes this vow that she can't drink wine. And the husband annuls the vow. So now she doesn't know the husband annulled it. And so therefore she goes ahead and drinks the wine. No punishment because the husband had annulled the vow. She didn't know it. My question to you is she required to do teshuvah? Is she required to repent for the fact that she thought she was sinning? She thought she was doing a sin. Well, I'll ask you a different question. Let's say a person's father leaves him. He writes a statement. He says, or a friend. He says, I'm giving you this $1,000 of cash. But he didn't tell it to the person. This person has an attorney who handles his business affairs, and he gave them $1,000 to the attorney for Reuven gave Shimon money, $1,000. But Shimon doesn't know it. Shimon sees the $1,000 lying there. He goes ahead and he steals the money. He thinks he's doing a sin. He's not doing a sin. It's his. He doesn't know it. He doesn't know it. Is that something you need to repent for? Do you have to do tshuva for such a thing? Do you have to do repentance for that aspect of it? All right, we'll stop the recording here. If anybody's an answer, I'm happy to address it. I'm happy to hear your answers.